Purpose no more, no less than ceremonial. We'd been pushed away from each other by the heat that no one wanted. Wood smoke stung my eyes, and the rock dug into my backside, the rough tunic itchy under my thighs. I slipped my foot out of its moccasin and pointed my toes towards the fire for no reason, to see how it felt. "You can't be cold," my father said, though it was he who had lit the fire and insisted that we gather around it. "I can," I thought, "if I've a mind." But I said, "No, Dad, I'm not cold." Through the flames I could see the boys, talking to each other and drawn back almost into the trees, as if they were thinking of melting into the woods and creeping off somewhere to do some boys' thing at which I would probably be more skilled. My mother sat on the stone where my father had told her to sit. Tunic rooked unbecomingly above her fat white knees, staring into the flames as people do. It was boring, and my father was holding us all there, bored, by force of will. "Where do you think you're going?" he said as I stood up. I said, "to pee." And he grunted and glanced towards the boys, as if the very mention of biological functions might incite their adolescent passions. "Just make sure you go out of sight," he said. Within a few days our feet would wear a path through the trees to the stream. But that first night there was moss underfoot, squashy in the dim light, and patches of wild strawberries so ripe and red they were still visible in the dusk, as if glowing. I squatted to gather a handful and wandered on, picking them out of my palm with my lips, kissing my own hand. Bats flashed through the space between branches, mapping depth into the flat sky. I could still hear them then. It was odd to walk in thin leather shoes, only a layer of borrowed, stolen, skin between my feet and the sticks and stones, the damp patches and soft places of the woods. I came to the stream and squatted beside it, dipped my fingers, listened. Water over rock and peat, leaves stirring behind me and over my head, a sheep calling on the hill. Fresh dew came through my shoes. The stream tugged at my fingertips and the heather explored my legs bare under the tunic. It was not that I didn't understand why my father loved these places, this outdoor life. It was not that I thought houses were better. When I returned to the fire, my mother was kneeling at its side, not propitiating the gods but hefty slabs of green turf from a pile. "Give us a hand, Sil," she said. "He says if you do it right you can cover it for the night and pull the turfs off in the morning. He says that's how they always did it, them, in the old days." "Yeah," I said, kneeling beside her. "And I dare say he didn't say how there was someone to show you in the old days, how they didn't just give out instructions and bugger off." She sat back. "Well," she said, "but they'd have known, wouldn't they, back then, not have needed telling. You'd have learnt it at your mum's side, and don't use language like that, he'll hear you." We were sleeping in the roundhouse, my parents and I. The students had built it earlier in the year, as part of a course on experiential archaeology, but they'd been firmly resistant to my father's view that everyone should sleep in it together. There was no reason, my father said, to think that ancient British households had been organised like modern families. If the students wanted a real experience, they should join us on the splintery bunks they'd built and padded with deerskins, donated by the anachronistic local lord of the manor. Or at least, since the lord of the manor lived in London and certainly didn't spend his summers in Northumberland, donated by some servant on his behalf. Professor Slade said, "Oh well, after all, authenticity was impossible, and not really the goal anyway. The point was to have a flavour of Iron Age life and perhaps some insight into particular processes or technologies. Let the students sleep in their tents if they prefer," he said. "They were almost certainly Iron Age tents also." "Skin tents," Dad said. "None of this fancy nylon stuff. The tent we used on our holidays was made of canvas, the colour of apricots, and possibly left over from the Second World War." I had noticed that the students had pitched their inauthentic, colourful and waterproof nylon tents in the clearing below our hut, screened by trees and hillside from both the roundhouse and the professor's larger tent nearer the track where he kept his car. I could sleep in one too, Dad," I said. "Give you and Mum some privacy."